right. 26 minutes, I guess, before 11 o'clock. Beautiful day out there. We have a book to talk to you about. Now, we tell you that all the time. This is an outstanding book. This one rises above. Apologies to all the other authors we've spoken to, but this is a really good one, just to be honest with you. This touches me in so many different ways. There's a father-son story here. There's a patriotic story here. There's a human determination story here. And if they ever make this into a movie, I hope they get like the Philharmonic Orchestra to do the score, because it needs that kind of music. Actually, no, I take that back. It doesn't need any music. This story stands alone without any of that. But I think you probably know what I was trying to say. The book is called The Last Salute. It's written by our guest, Major Robert Paley. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. He served as the executive officer of a 28-man team which mentored an Afghan infantry battalion in combat operations. He's the son, and this is where it gets you. He's the son of a 100% disabled veteran who fought in Korea and Vietnam. I believe he's no longer with us, if I remember right. The book is called The Last Salute, the true story of a West Point cadet's dream to honor his dying father, and boy, has he done it. If there's a way in heaven to look down upon the people we've left in love, then his father is up there smoking a big cigar or something. Major Robert Paley, I already spoke real briefly to him before we went on the air, and now we get to interview him. Major Paley, good morning, sir. What an honor to have you on our show.
Well, good morning, Larry and Robin, and first of all, thank you for having me on The Source with all your listeners. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here today.
Oh, my gosh. You have contributed in so many great ways. I have to ask you a technical question first. I've been battling the board here this morning. Are you getting an echo?
Me?
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Not too bad. Okay.
How about me?
Okay. No, you sound good. You sound good on this end. So take us to the beginning of this. You were born in 1966, and you were how old when your dad was in the hospital?
Yeah, so my father was deployed to Vietnam in January of 1966, and I was born in February. And sometime around August of 66, he was medevaced back from Vietnam back to the States to Walter Reed. So he almost didn't make it. So I may not, had things gone differently, I would not have even known my father. But thank God he was able to survive his brain surgery when he got to Walter Reed. He had to have a shunt put in due to water in the brain and meningitis, that kind of stuff. And so for 12 years of my life, all I knew was I had a retired sergeant major father who wore a hearing aid, and I really didn't know much other than that.
Did he walk?
And that's how it all started. He was actually, other than not being able to hear, you would never know he was a disabled veteran up until I was 12 years old. He had his mental faculties. He was, smart as a whip. He read books constantly. But what's interesting about his story and how it all leads into, the book is that I do have proof that he loved West Point so much since he was a kid that even when he was growing up, his mother and father both immigrated and escaped communism in Russia during the early 1900s.
Wow.
And met in New York City. And their son would go on to fight communism in 2 wars in Korea and Vietnam. And I thought that was kind of ironic.
That is amazing. Yeah, that even adds to it, right? So not to
that's kind of how it started.
Not to zoom past your father's whole life, but take us to the end of his life, because that's a turning point for you.
Yeah, the end of life as he knew it, when he was healthy and aware, occurred when I was 12 years old, and it came out of the blue. All of a sudden, he wasn't home. One day, we got back from shopping, and the police had taken him at his own request. If you recall, during the 70s, around the Vietnam era, PTSD wasn't as diagnosed and wasn't handled as well as it is today. And I know some people would find that debatable, but it has come a long way. And he was afraid he would, hurt his family, and because of his love for us, he called the police and asked them to take him away.
Really?
He knew something wasn't right. So that was the day everything changed for me, when I learned about, my mother sat me down with a box and said, "Let me tell you why your father's sick." And she finally gave me his box of military records, his medals, awards. I found the Purple Heart in there. And then all of a sudden, I find these coins, and it kind of took away from that whole macho image of what I was reading and everything and I thought, my dad collected coins. Nothing against those who collect coins.
Right.
I hope, Larry, Robin, you don't collect coins and take that as an insult. but it just wasn't part of that, everything else I was reading. And then my mother walks in and changes everything. She says, those silver dollars mean more to your father than anything else in that box. And I said, what? Why?
Yeah.
And she explained that it's the tradition of an officer who gets commissioned to pick a sergeant to give them their first salute. They have the choice who that first salute would be because there's only one first salute. And my father had a whole box of them, which means he was highly respected by the officers he served with. And once she told me that, I thought that was the coolest tradition I've ever heard of. And while she was explaining why he had to have brain surgery in the morning and why the police took him away, I can't explain it other than I had like a vision where all of a sudden I saw myself standing at West Point as an adult saluting my dad. And I said, Mom, do you have a silver dollar for 1978, the year this happened? And she said, well, I don't collect them as much. They're not all silver anymore. And I said, well, that's not why I want it. So she went to her jewelry box. I heard her rumbling around, and a minute later she comes back with an Eisenhower silver dollar and hands it to me.
Wow.
Here it is. What do you want it for? I said, Mom, not only is Dad going to survive his surgery tomorrow, but I'm going to become an officer and give him my first salute and give him this coin. And she said, you want to be an officer? And she was shocked because at that point in my life, I'd lost every judo tournament. I peed my pants on the baseball team. I was not making a future West Point cadet. I was not going to be an Olympic athlete. And so she's looking at me with that kind of doubt in her, wondering, where is this coming from? And all I could say is it was something that just happened. I just thought it was such a cool tradition that when that came in my mind, right then and there, I told her, Mom, I'm going to West Point. And she got tears in her eyes because she knew how much that would mean to my dad.
Wow.
That's where the story begins.
All right, so how did you go from there to actually being in West Point? You obviously had to finish school, right?
Yes. I wasn't, math is always my challenge. Of course, West Point was founded as an engineering school, so I didn't have any idea. You know how they say the bee shouldn't be able to fly, but it does because no one told it it can't.
Right.
Well, I shouldn't be able to go to West Point with my math ability, but I didn't know that, so I did it, and I managed to get through.
Oh, I love that analogy. Okay.
It was. No one told me I couldn't, so I thought I could, and only after reading books at the library about what it took to get to West Point that I realized, oh my goodness.
You probably wouldn't have gone if you read those books first, right?
Right. Yeah, because I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, but what happened was that night when my father went into the hospital, I prayed that he would survive the surgery, and all of a sudden, I can't explain it, and the whole book is just a strange series of coincidences that happen.
There's so many reasons I love your book. I mean, your faith in God that you just expressed, your belief in pursuing your beliefs, I guess is the best way to say that. There's so much about this story that really, and I don't think I'm alone in everything I'm saying. I bet you've heard, you're getting 5-star reviews across the board on Amazon, so nothing but 5 stars, and people are saying really wonderful things about the book.
Thank you.
And your mom is such an amazing woman. I mean, you always, throughout the book, in the different things that you tried to succeed at, you would always ask you would always feel like you disappointed your mom, but she would say to you, you always win in the end. I mean, that was such a powerful statement.
Yeah, coming from a kid who lost every single tournament from the age of 8 to 12 and had a wall of certificates of participation, never won a medal or a trophy, for me to turn around after that prayer and start becoming a state judo champion and everything else, a wrestling, captain and things like that, she must have been thrilled. So when she said, you always win in the end, that was such a contrast to how my earlier life started. So she was probably very glad that I finally started to learn to win, and but thank you for mentioning that, because the truth is I've always written this story as a tribute to my father, and over time I realized it's just as much a tribute to my mother. I'm blessed that I had amazing parents that I'm so
Is your mom
honored.
still around?
Thank God she is. And the reason that I wrote this book and rushed it to print, if you want to say that, after 20 years, if you want to call that rushing, was because she got ill in December, right before I went out on vacation with my wife, Allison. And she, I realized, you know what, my mom's 82, going on 83. She won't be here forever, and I will regret so bad if she doesn't get to read the book, because she always asked me with her cute Japanese accent, "You finished book? You finished book?" I said, "No, not yet, Mom. Still working on it." She goes, "How long does it take you to write this?" So, yeah, she's a hoot. I mean, even, she's like always been there for me. You know what's interesting though, looking back, and is the more I think about things, is I really think my mother knew what she was doing when she sat me down and told me my dad's history. I think she thought he might not make it, and she wanted to instill in me his values to keep him alive somehow.
I think you're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really think that she had some wisdom beyond what I understood at the time was happening.
Yeah, and inspiration. I don't know this for a fact. I'm not. I do believe in God, but I don't know that I can tell you anything about him because I just don't know. But I do think sometimes we're influenced by God himself or by his angels or something. So is it usually with books we don't like to tell the end, but I mean, tell us, the book is called The Last Salute, not The First Salute. So tell us about that.
Very, very good catch. Thank God my father was able to survive long enough. Well, he had dementia, okay, so once he had his surgery when I was 12 years old, he didn't remember that he retired from the Army. He didn't remember what he had for breakfast. He didn't remember if we'd even come to see him that day after we left. But ironically, when I took out the silver dollar my mom gave me and handed it to him and he said, "What's this for?" I said, "It's for you." And then I took it back and said, "But not yet." I said, "You need to live. You need to get better, because someday I'm going to be an officer and you're going to be my first salute." His eyes lit up. He totally understood what I was saying, and then he studied me, and then he said, "Very good," which is my dad's highest compliment. He was a sergeant major. They don't jump up and down and wave their hands. And then 2 weeks later, my mother went to visit him and came home, and he asked her, "Is Bobby going to West Point?" They called me Bobby, of course, because my mother was Japanese and she couldn't say my name Robert. She called me Robert. And so I don't know why she would give me a name that she can't pronounce, but that's the family joke ever since she named me. It even appeared on my birth certificate, Lobert. She had to change it. She said, like Robert Ledford.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
There was a time, though, that there was a point where you might have thought you might not get in because you had an accident and you were afraid you were going to lose your sight.
Yes, I went from the kid who got beat up and bullied all the time to kid who got tired of getting beat up and bullied all the time, and I had some other childhood trauma that made me want to learn to protect myself and my family. So I started taking the martial arts, and finally, by the time I was a teenager, I was in full contact kung fu. I was a brown belt in judo, 2-time state champion. So I overcame the earlier years of being bullied. And what happened was I was in getting ready for a full contact kung fu match, and I got kicked in the eye by my instructor accidentally, and it blinded me in my right eye for several days. Gosh. And I heard them whispering that he's going to lose his eye. I'm like, well, my eyes hurt, not my ears. Why did you have to say that where I could hear you?
Oh no! Oh no! Hey, I have a question for you about the book.
Sure.
Is this self-published?
It is self-published.
Oh my gosh! You've got a hit. I mean, some publisher has to pick this up, and you said math wasn't a good subject. Writing must have been, though. You're a good writer.
Thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate you saying that. Well, ironically, a year ago this time, I was just about to go into the darkest period of my life, where my PTSD, I was diagnosed by the VA with PTSD, and it started coming back. And I want to say thank you, first of all. I've listened to some of your past shows where you really do a great job interviewing people that are helping those with PTSD, and we call it PTS now. We don't like to call it the disorder. But
I appreciate
the bottom line is,
yeah.
I thank you for that. I wanted to make sure I thanked you guys for what you do. And
well, thank you.
It's absolutely fantastic. And 2018 was my dark night of the soul when everything caught up with me. And I went to the place where I couldn't write 50 pages on my master's thesis, and I had to get 6 months of extensions with the doctor's note. My doctor from the VA had to explain to them that this is real. He's not functioning right now properly. So I fancied myself a writer, Larry, but at that point I couldn't get past page 2 on a 50-page assignment. And finally, my psychologist told me, you need to go to this thing called Save a Warrior. So I went to Save a Warrior in December, on December 2nd of all things, which is the anniversary of my father's death. And 5.5 days later, when I came out of that, I was a new man. And 7 weeks later, on February 10th, my dad's birthday, I finished the book. I don't know if you believe in irony or coincidences, but isn't that crazy?
I don't.
It started the day he died, and I finished it on his birthday.
That is amazing. I don't know. To me, it just sounds like there's a little bit of divine guidance or something in your life, and you know what it is? I think, I mean, the one thing there's another thing I haven't mentioned that probably is obvious, but there's love. I mean, the love you have for your father, the love you have for your mother, the love they have had for you. I mean, all of that is why everything else comes together. That's what I think.
Thank you. And, you know, it was hard to write this book, one, because I didn't want to be making it all about me. And I guess when you're writing a memoir, what else is it going to be about?
Sure.
But I wanted to make sure it was about my family. I wanted to make sure that all the mentors that helped me along the way, you know, from the Writers Guild Initiative in New York City, who helped me starting in 2008 learn to write, you know, to my coaches. And a year ago at this time, I was literally sitting here at West Point writing in my journal about how tough it was for me to function. I knew something was starting to go wrong, but I was at a West Point press corps reunion. By the way, I'm calling you from West Point right now. Today's my book launch.
Oh, congratulations.
No better place to launch it from, right?
It is. It's great.
You're also a humorist, and
oh, really?
And yeah, because you made me laugh when you when you told us the story about your sister Karen and how you wanted a monkey, and then you were contemplating about her and her buggy or something, and what would happen if you let go, and that was it. I know it was kind of dangerous, but it was pretty funny too.
I can't believe you're telling on me in front of everybody. That was so embarrassing.
I
rolled my little sister, let her go down a hill in her buggy. That was in Fort Hamilton, New York. I'll never forget it. And thank God she didn't get hit by a car, and to this day she forgave me. So thank you. You know, it's a really you know, tough story emotionally to write about with all the things that are in it. I wanted to try to have some humor in it too, because everybody's life is filled with some laughter and tears. I mean, it wouldn't be, who would want to read a book that's just nothing but, you know, sadness? I sure wouldn't. So
yeah, but
I tried when I could to share some of the funny stories in my family.
But this book is a huge book. It's a story about genuine love, you know, within the family. You know, the humor, the sadness. It's just absolutely marvelous.
Well, thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. First of all, you know, when I finished writing the book in February, after, you know, telling you I couldn't finish a 50-page thesis the previous year, and then for me to finish 89 chapters in 7 weeks is just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that I'm talking to you on the radio right now with the source of all things. It's just surreal, and it's been such a fun ride. And you know, my goal is to let other veterans know that are out there that are suffering from PTSD that there is help, and the program I went to through Save a Warrior. Because, you know, I guess, Larry and Robin, what I realized in this journey was, when I said to my father I was going to give him my first salute when I graduated from West Point, I guess as a kid I thought I was going to save him. I thought that would make him, heal him.
You did.
And that was.
I think you did save him.
Well, I believe it kept him alive, to be honest, because he died, you know, 18 months after graduating.
Yeah.
But at least he got to see that.
I think you did that. I'm again just going back to my whatever faith I have is, I do think he's there. He's somewhere. I mean, I'm not a psychic, and I wish I was. When I see those guys, I always wish I could do that. You know,
that'd be amazing.
John Edward. Hey, Dad, how you doing? You right? But yeah,
well,
but I can't.
He is. Yeah.
Have you ever had, okay, not to get too weirded out here, but I mean,
let's go there.
Have you ever had that moment, though? I mean, have you ever had that where maybe you feel like he's right there, or you sort of got a chill and you weren't sure?
I was just about to say, even while he was alive and I was at West Point, there were certain things I experienced, like when the flag was raised or lowered and I was saluting it, and I remembered all the times he stood on the parade field saluting the flag, and even as a civilian saluting at my elementary school. Yeah, there's these weird feelings, a chill that comes through me, and even after he's passed, I still feel it. And the hardest thing about putting this book out there was I didn't want to dishonor my father's memory by making this book seem like it was about me, because it's truly about him and my mom and what an amazing love story they are and how supportive they were of my dream. And that was the hard part for me. I didn't want to sell out his memory, and I hope I did him honor.
Well, you were very honest, because there was a time in the hospital that he didn't recognize you, and then when you went home, your grandmother came in and spoke to you about that. And that was very touching.
Robbie, you're just getting on these. You're touching those ones that bring the tears to my eyes. Thank you so much. Yeah, he had brain surgery, so of course you're going to be a little bit confused when you wake up. And when he woke up, I had the silver dollar in my hand, and I wanted to tell him, "Hey, Daddy, I'm going to go to West Point. You're going to be my first salute, so you got to get better." And as he focused his eyes on me, the first thing he said was, "Who are you?" And it felt like a knife to the heart, and I just didn't understand. I was only 12, and I ran out of the room crying.
Oh my God!
So it started off where it didn't look good that he would even know who I was, and the irony is, as I was a cadet, you were asking me about the later part of the story, Larry. It hit me. Even when I do give him the salute, he won't remember it after it's over. It just made everything seem, what was this all about? But it was worth it.
I think a gesture, though, is in stone as much as anything else is, and I don't know. I think it does go a long way. And you know what? Even if it doesn't, even if I'm wrong about that, even if whatever faith I have is just I'm on the wrong train at the wrong track, you know what you're doing? You're touching all of us. And I think by touching us, we all can relate to this story. We don't have your story, but we have our own, and we can see it. There's a Rocky element to this in referencing the movie. Yeah,
right.
I don't mean like it's got a Rocky element.
I didn't want to admit that. I had a West Point buddy of mine saw that I had a Rocky poster in my room at one point in one of my earlier drafts. He goes, "Rob, don't put that in there." And the truth is, my mother saw it, was so inspired, she dragged me to the movie theater to see it because she knew I had this dream to go to West Point, and she knew that would be good for me. So I got to admit, I'm a huge Rocky fan.
No, your salute is that last punch to Apollo Creed.
Oh wow, that's awesome, Larry and Robin. Thank you for saying all these kind things. I really appreciate it.
And you inherited the love of movies, I think, from your dad, because you said that he was a huge John Wayne fan, and him and your mom would go to the movies.
Do you know, Robin, that we laugh to this day that when we told him John Wayne died in 1979, just a year after his illness, he got a bigger lump in his throat for that than when we told him his mother passed away.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no.
Oh, my gosh.
I know that's horrible, but he loved John Wayne. And speaking of movies, I did have a few people ask me. By the way, I was interviewed last night here at West Point by WKDT, and it turns out the general manager, the senior cadet of the radio station, is from Ocala.
Oh, is that right?
Really?
Well,
yeah, he's from your town.
So
he said to say hello.
Can you tell us his name? Tell us his name. Maybe we know him.
Yes, his name is Nicholas LeVay, Levay,
okay.
And he'd be happy to talk to you if you'd like to speak.
Well, I don't recognize the name, but one of our listeners certainly must know him. So,
sure. And I'm actually trying to work on the screenplay right now with a screenwriter named Christopher Kyle.
Nice.
And I want to, he's been sticking by me through several years of procrastinating and trying to get moving on the book and now the screenplay. And the Writers Guild has been amazing in helping veterans and caregivers learn to use writing to deal with their trauma. And it's just so many people I appreciate giving me the chance to thank, because it's been an amazing journey.
I don't know. I think you have things that will fall in place that will lead this book to becoming. I don't know if you need in today's world. You really don't need Harper & Collins or Simon & Schuster, whatever. You can do it on your own, but I think sometimes it's easier, or it goes a little bit farther with one of them.
I agree.
But I do think a movie company is going to come forward. Just make sure it's well. Oh, you're writing your own movie, so that part you got handled. But the soundtrack has to be.
It has to be.
Has to be a good soundtrack.
Oh, Larry, I'll have them consult with you on the soundtrack.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Robin's saying no.
Just, no. I will watch the movie though, and I'll let you know. I really think you have a hit on your hands. Only because I think you're touching all of us. The Last Salute. This is one of the best books I've ever read, and I'm not the only one saying that. Let me see. This book is one of the best books I've ever read. I've read in a long time. I'm reading now from one of the reviews. So this person agrees with me, whoever this is. It's a verified purchase. Who is that? Okay. It says, if you want to feel gratitude for what you have in this world, read this book. There you go. I will go out on a limb and say that you'll likely want to reach out to Rob and be his friend. And I feel like we are friends just with this short little interview. And
I appreciate it. Likewise.
That doesn't happen often either.
And you do reference God in your book.
Absolutely. I give all the glory to God. Absolutely. None of this would happen without him, in my opinion. And as I'm sitting here, I've got the Bible in my hand right now because I'm nervous. So.
All right. I would like the listeners to know that we have a copy of the book. In fact, it was signed. Major Robert Paley signed the book.
Yes, two.
And
yes.
Who's it to? A listener?
Uh-huh.
And you sent one to me with my name in it, so I'm keeping that one. And what's the other one?
I hope this book speaks to you. There are no coincidences. It is to the source, loyal listener.
There you go. So if you'd like the book, call me right now, 622-9622. I can only pick one of you, so I will pick one at random, and you will have the book, 622-9622. The rest of us have to go buy it. I did find it on Amazon. Do you have a website set up for the book?
No, Amazon it is. Kindle and softback edition.
All right, let me pick one at random. Here, 3, 2, 1... Oh my gosh, Robin, there's so many of them.
I know.
All right, this one. Here we go.
Chills.
Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
This is Matt Wilkerson.
Matt, you got the book.
Nice.
Hey, do me a favor.
Yeah.
Donate it to somebody else in my honor, but I still want to read it.
Okay, how am I going to do that?
You can pick up the book, Matt, and then when you're done, you can bring it back, and then we'll give it away again.
He's going to give it away. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Major Robert Paley, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. That was so good.
My honor. Thank you both.
You are welcome. All right, we'll take a little break. This is WOCA Ocala.
News. I'm Lillian Wu. The Supreme Court taking up a high-profile case today involving a proposed question on the census.
The Trump administration and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in particular want it reinstituted on the census questionnaire. It asks basically how many citizens live in this household. And that little question on the census is of immense political impact.
Fox's Doug McKelway. Those who want the question off say it could intimidate immigrant families and cause an undercount, while the administration says it's important to enforce the Voting Rights Act.
The census determines how many electoral votes any one state has, how many congressional representatives any one state has, and how many federal dollars are divvied out to